everyone. How we doing? Welcome to another episode of the Richie Hicks Jr. Sports Podcast. With me tonight, I have my good friends, Mr. Mike Zappi, Mr. Quentin Moore. And we're going to speak on the red-hot Knicks. We're also going to talk a little NBA results from this evening. John Morant's troubles are going bad and getting worse. Franchise tags applied to some key names in the NFL. We've got a New Orleans Saints quarterback now, a new one. I think everybody knows who that is, but we're going to speak on it, and we're going to talk about how it affects some of these other quarterbacks. Latest on DJ and Saquon. DJ's representatives are in East Rutherford working that out. We're going to give our thoughts on Lamar Jackson and his immediate future. We have Calvin Ridley reinstated, and we're also going to speak on another quarterback scenario where Aaron Rodgers might play, assuming he doesn't retire. Good to see you boys. How you doing?
Doing great.
It's a good day, man. It's a good day.
Yeah, this is an exciting time for football fans. The free agency period. We're going to devote a good chunk to this. Franchise tags being applied on some big names. But we're going to start out with my favorite New York team on the hardwood, as well as Quentin's. The only New York team. I don't acknowledge that squad in Brooklyn. No Brunson,
They're
no
still in
Powell.
New Jersey. They're still New Jersey Nets to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm with that. I mean, technically, I claim the New York era of Nets basketball, I claim in the ABA, the Dr. J era. At any rate, no Brunson, no problem. Knicks extend their win streak to 9 with a double overtime victory over the Celtics last night. Celtics follow that up tonight with another overtime defeat to the Cleveland Cavaliers, a team that more and more looks like will be going toe-to-toe with the New York Knicks in round 1. My question on the Knicks, can this team make a run in the East? Can they make a title run, get to the ECF? It looks like they certainly have the Celtics number. With the departure of Durant, Kyrie out of Brooklyn, it's easy to see that the Nets are going nowhere. They're actually, in my opinion, the Nets are clogging up a playoff spot. But I gotta say, man, hottest team in the NBA right now, due to Milwaukee's loss earlier this week, and I gotta think the Knicks have a legitimate shot to end up in the Final Four of the NBA this year and possibly face the Bucks in the ECF. Your thoughts, guys?
I think you're right. I think it goes back to what I've been talking about, Josh Hart. I think that trade has made a humongous difference for this team. And then really watching that game last night with you guys and seeing the grit behind this Knicks team, if Julius Randle, he just needs to understand it's not his responsibility to take over the game in the fourth quarter. You know,
yeah. Brunson's on the court last night. That doesn't happen. It's a little forgivable because you had 3 guys picking up the slack in a different way, but Emmanuel Quickley.
Backup point guard, great. Yeah,
I mean, going in, great. I think most thought Derrick Rose was going to get some action, but that didn't happen.
Yeah, and it's kind of been like, all right, we talked about this. Like, well, about 20 games left, they'll start giving Derrick Rose a lot more minutes, but we haven't seen it, and that's a good thing. That's a good problem to have when you don't need to go and get your veteran in the game because your youth is doing well. I think they're going to give Boston some problems. I know we're pretty set on that they're going to be facing Cleveland in the first round. I think they can easily defeat Cleveland. And I think Boston, if you guys didn't wake them up, needs to wake them up because you all match up really well against them, really well.
Yeah, my only frustration is being the 4 or the 5 going into round 1. You figure you beat Cleveland, you're running right into the league's best team in Milwaukee as opposed to playing the Celtics, who would face the winner of 3-6, in my opinion. That'll be Philly.
That's true.
But
I didn't think about the fact that Boston's now 2 games back from Milwaukee. Because
it looks like Milwaukee's definitely going to get that 1 seed. Philadelphia wins tonight by 4, 147-143 in Indy. As I already stated, the Celtics lost a tough one tonight. But the way the Knicks are playing, I mean, a defeat in round 2 to a team that's 2 years removed from the NBA Finals is far from a failure this year. Jesus. Yeah, 50 years. Indeed. It has been that long.
Shout out to my Dukes.
Yeah, Mom Dukes. Biggest fan of the show. Always tuning in. And yes, a devout Giants, Knicks, and Yankees fan. That's my only frustration. I wish the Knicks didn't wake up this late in the year. The struggles at home have kind of subsided. It looks like they finally figured out how to win home games. They've been great on the road all year. But on the positive side, when it comes to playoff basketball, being a good team on the road goes a very long way when you're trying to accomplish something. And while we talk about being on the road, going out, things of that nature, Jesus Lord. John Morant's troubles get bad to worse. Gives me the Ron Artest vibes when he got that ridiculous suspension. But, I mean, it was a different situation with Artest. That was a fight. While I don't condone what he did, I understand it. You know, at the end of the day, you know, that Queens shit dies kind of hard. And, you know, he was in Artest's eyes, he was protecting his teammates, as was Steven Jackson. I take less issue with that than what I do with what John Morant's been doing in general. Your thoughts, gentlemen, on the John Morant situation?
The John Morant situation. I mean, the kid is a goddamn knucklehead. I mean,
Indeed.
If I'm making the type of money that NBA players make, and I sit back and do what he did, I'm a goddamn fool. Okay, that I'm literally telling you that I'm about to throw away something that is of value, something that can carry me throughout life. And that's the problem. See, it's also with this society, it's with this culture nowadays, because everybody is clout chasing. Everything's about, you know, look at me, social media. Social media has it's great to have social media, but it's also detrimental to have social media. You know what I mean? Because a lot of people are clout chasing. You know what I mean? Everybody wants to be seen. Everybody wants to be known. Everybody wants to, you know, look at me, look at me. They got that whole look at me complex. Okay. Fame is fleeting, as we all know. Okay. You hear 1 minute, you go on the next.
You see it in rap all the time. You've seen,
you see it, exactly.
You've seen robberies occur because guys are flossing, showing exactly how much they're carrying on them, damn near giving up their locations. And it's so funny. Years ago, the NBA that I followed, not just the NBA, but we're talking about a player in that league right now. What was off limits was everything that is for the world to see. But what I find funny about what we're seeing now is that it seems like the last thing that they want to talk about, be accountable for, is actually stuff that goes on the court. KD is the prime example of that. You know, one of the best scorers of any and all eras, but, you know, definitely questionable at best when it comes to his sensitivity when dealing with NBA legends who are now members of the media, whether it be Shaquille O'Neal, guys like Charles Barkley, guys who have paved their way, really. Guys
had
who
to deal with a lot worse media.
Indeed. And it's
that's why I don't like. That's why I don't like watching this era of the NBA, because it's soft. It's SAWFT, soft. Very soft.
It's definitely not what we grew up on. Like, what I like about the particular Knicks team that's running around now is that Tom Thibodeau is an old school basketball guy that instills old school basketball values. I love the grittiness. But when you look around the league, my biggest issue, and I've said this on previous shows, is that the rules. NBA legend John Barry recently spoke on this, Rick Barry, the father, about how so many rules are just being ignored now, whether it be the illegal screens, you know, in the golden era, superstars might get that little step, but not 5, not 4. You know,
that's another reason why I became totally disinterested in the whole league, because I'm like, yo, I heard this Euro step and I see it myself. I was like, that's traveling, man. That's traveling.
Yeah, no matter what country it was. Yeah, it doesn't matter what country it was derived from. You give up your pivot foot. That's a travel.
That's travel,
You know,
bro. Like,
Idris made an interesting point about how even something like no hand checking benefits the offense. Even something like palming the ball now when you're doing a crossover, that changes the game. Because you think about a great scorer like an Allen Iverson, a guy who was a smaller player for his position, but he made up for it with a lot of grit. He made up for it with being able to get separation off of that ridiculous crossover that he had. But Idris made a good point about like the 60s. Guys had to dribble the ball on the top. Otherwise it was a palming violation. So, I think about it. Every era is different, but when you think about trying to judge the previous guys, these guys couldn't hang in our league. I'm like, no, sir. They have made things very easy for you guys to score a lot of points nowadays, and you got to be thankful for that.
It's similar. It's similar to football. It's more of an offensive game now. Defense can't you can't bump the receiver after 3 yards. Can't you know what I mean? I mean, you might as well just play 7-on-7.
We're seeing it in baseball now with the rule changes too. It's no argument, so to speak, that they are doing their due diligence to up offense in any and all sports to bring in more viewers that don't necessarily watch sports, or maybe people that are, I guess you consider casuals. But it's definitely a different league. And as far as Morant goes, in the closing thought before we move this on to the football side of things, you got to get rid of the tag-alongs, bottom line. I have said this numerous times in the previous weeks with regard to this guy, going back to even last year. But it's become painfully evident that this kid just needs better direction. And when your father is more interested in being your bro than he is in being your disciplinarian, someone you look to for guidance, that in itself is a grand issue in this whole fuckery. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It is what it is. Zappy, anything on this before we move it along?
I mean, I think it's a lot, man. Well, first of all, I will say that the ball is in Adam Silver's court right now. And this is, I don't think a lot of people realize how big this actually is. And this is a really big thing, especially when you have players. I think it was Brooks that said something today about we need to assure we're not bringing weapons from Memphis to Utah or on a plane to Denver.
I know Steven Adams spoke his mind and basically said, guys need to be disciplined and just stay in your damn hotel room, get room service, and enjoy yourself. No reason to run around crazy.
But that's also Steven Adams that's been around for a few years,
Yeah, it's a grown man in the league. That's a grown man.
Yeah, that's a grown man. But it's I think we're seeing a bigger problem because it ties into what we're talking about, how soft the NFL, the NBA, everything has gotten, and that's how soft we've gotten when it comes to punishment and how parents can parent and all that stuff. And then you talk about a John Morant that probably grew up with everything given to him, handed to him, just based on what we know about him.
I think the weirdest thing about all this, years ago, I had a friend who I felt was always haunted by the incarceration of his brother, in the sense that he felt in some weird sadistic way they had to follow in his brother's footsteps. Ultimately, you manifest enough of that negativity and you're going to find a way to find yourself in it. Not everybody is built like that. Not everybody is meant to be on that. And I think something that all these dudes need to understand, a lot of children are looking up to you, and you don't have to glorify the streets. If you want to do something positive, go into these neighborhoods and uplift the situations. Do things that can keep kids away from some of the menacing activities that are going on in broken down communities. Don't add to it on the level that, first of all, you're a visitor, and second of all, you're just flaunting. That's not who you are, and that's not what you're about. But it's pure stupidity at its finest.
And you know what's crazy about it too is what you just said right there. John Morant is an image. He's an image to children across this great nation. And when you see kids that got to see that Instagram post of him flashing that weapon, it's going to send a message.
Us, we're grown men, but you're talking about kids that are very impressionable.
And they really are, and especially when it's someone like this, because we were once kids too. And I will say that a lot of people, when they see that one celebrity they're looking up to, that one hero of an NFL, NBA, Major League, whatever player it is, and they say, oh, well, he's carrying one. That must be cool to do. So I'm going to do that. You know,
and when you look at issues in this country, whether it be the issues with school shootings, every parent's nightmare, when you look at just the history of violence in general, I will never understand on any level why this needs to be glorified. It bleeds into the hip hop stuff too, because we have spoken time and time again that the birth of it was to bring people together, not for some of the.
Yeah, but the thing is, the United States, United States was founded on violence and sex. You know what I mean? And no matter how much you try to implement puritanical values and, you know, quote unquote Christian values, it's never going to fly because the overlying premise is sex and violence is going to overrule all of that. You know what I mean?
And I think the biggest oxymoron of it all is that for a place that exhibits so much of it, whether it be the sex or the violence, we still don't necessarily. We're uptight. That's the best part of all this. When you travel abroad and you see some of this beautiful world, you know, a lot of people are not nearly as uptight as us. That's a whole nother conversation for another day. But John Morant, get your head out of your ass, please, because you're about to throw away your life over nothing worth any value. Because the second you go down, that whole entourage you have they're going to be walking in a different direction. That's why they're called the tag-alongs.
And his worst thing that can happen, not only this going on with him, but if Memphis keeps winning.
That's another thing. You see a guy get sidelined and his team starts winning, it devalues him. And then when you factor in all the drama, I mean, shit, everybody knew Dennis Rodman was a phenomenal rebounder. But after being on the watch of Phil Jackson and Michael Jordan, where was his value? San Antonio, he was a troubled player. Then at the many stops he made after the Chicago Bulls dynasty, you know, these are things. Everybody grows up on their own time, but not everybody has the luxury of making so many mistakes. It's time to wake up. Idris Salam, Wangster. Yeah, bro. Indeed. We're going to flip this over to the NFL. We had some big names getting franchise tagged today. Those of you who don't know, a lot of these deals need to be sewed up before Tuesday. Some names, Zappy's guy, Tony Pollard. We've got Josh Jacobs of the Las Vegas Raiders also getting tagged. Your thoughts, Zappy? This is your player, Tony Pollard. And I guess it also, your thoughts on Zeke. They've been sharing the backfield for a few years now. Do you think Zeke gets cut? I know Quentin and I spoke on this off air.
Zeke will only be a Dallas Cowboy when they're willing to redo his contract and he's willing to take a pay cut, if he's willing to take a pay cut to Dallas's terms. He's got to understand that if Dallas lets him go on the open market, he's not getting more than the league minimum. So if it's about money, he needs to stay with Dallas. If it's not about money, he needs to stay with Dallas. That first of all, I look at the friendship between him and Dak. I think that's the biggest thing, especially with his third down skill set to block, you know. And then with Tony Pollard, you look at a guy that, I mean, he's flashy. He's very flashy. He is coming off of a broken foot that happened in the NFC divisional game. But the tag tells me that pretty much that we're going to draft the running back. And we're going to,
if he plays ball to the team's specifications, basically.
Yeah.
You're losing a good blocker. He's not the running back he was in college, nor when, you know, we had these conversations often, Quentin and I, other people that follow the game. Running backs depreciate. Running backs get a lot of miles. I actually do have a decent amount of respect for Zeke, all rivalry aside, because of the fact that he has put it out there for this organization.
Right.
But the best is behind him for sure.
It's definitely behind him. And so that's why, you know, I look at Dallas, and that's the scary thing about what's going on right now in the NFL, especially for running backs like a Tony Pollard, like Saquon, like Zeke, any running back that's in that position is this draft is deep at the running back position. It is very deep. And when your teams like the Giants, your teams like the Cowboys obviously place the tag on Pollard. We'll see what happens tonight with DJ, which can ultimately lead to the Giants tagging a Saquon and being in the exact same situation where you tag the player, you draft the replacement, good riddance after next year, unless they're willing to play to your standards. I'm happy about Pollard because of the importance behind him in Dallas's offense. And also I don't want to see him be a Charger because I think
that would be a nice one too. And obviously there were rumblings about that. Josh Jacobs, he gets tagged. And another thing too, because our running back, Quentin and I, Saquon Barkley, this does influence some of that now with where his value is, because with so many running backs being available this year, it's not exactly, it's more the organization has the advantage at the bargaining table.
Yeah.
But go ahead, Q. Go ahead.
I kept telling people when I go on these forums and I see what they're talking about and everybody's upset, I don't want Barkley to go. I don't want them to leave. I'm like, look, it's like buying a car from a dealership. As soon as you drive that car off that dealership, I don't care how new it is. I don't care if it's brand new off the showroom floor. That thing drops like 40% as soon as you drive it off the lot.
If we're doing the Carfax on Saquon Barkley, we have a knee injury. We have 21 missed games. Yes, an ankle. 21 missed games during the course of the career. And if we're doing the facts, although I was very proud of his comeback season, has not had a season quite like his rookie run.
Right, and last season, and I pointed this out. Last season, he disappeared in a few games. Okay, and in particular, the Seattle game, the Eagle games, he disappeared.
That wasn't just this year. That's been an issue of Saquon since over his duration as a Giants player. And I want to make it clear, this is not about me disparaging Saquon. I've made it clear that I'm a fan of his, and if it fits into the team vision, yes, I want him back. Daniel Jones, this is a big one because if he is able to agree to a deal with the Giants within the next 48 hours, essentially what that does is give the Giants the ability to slap the franchise tag on Saquon Barkley, which will be a little over $10 million a year. And basically next year, go back to the board, and this is another year of Saquon playing, and then you find out if you want to cut a deal at that point. That is the ideal situation for the Giants. And plus, you figure a DJ deal 4 or 5 years, year one is probably going to be, is more than likely going to be the most affordable of the years. And that opens up the position to possibly bring back a guy like a Julian Love or to address other needs on the team even before the draft. I'm talking about the first wave of free agency. But this is it's looking like 40. It's looking like at least 40.
What is it? 3:00 tomorrow that the franchise tag needs to be placed by?
Yes.
These next 12 hours, whatever hours it is, are the most critical, but they are more important, in my opinion, for the New York Football Giants than they are for Daniel Jones. And the reason why I say that is because you guys need to be able to plan for what's coming up. If DJ is gone, if him and his agent are set on that 45 per, that's the reason why you're putting the non-exclusive tag on him, because it's going to let him go negotiate, find that deal.
I think what has me optimistic about it all is the fact that his representatives are in the building. And while Q made a good point off air that the media is always going this way, going that way, you can't always believe what you hear. One thing that I do know is that he wants to be there. So I would say that one way or another, Daniel Jones is going to be a New York Giant this year. The question is this deal going to get struck soon enough where they could slap that tag on Barkley?
I'm not comfortable with him at 45 mil And
I don't think it's going to be 45. I really don't.
I'm not even comfortable with him at 35 mil. Because here's why. Okay, any diehard football fan, and I know you are, Richie. I know you are too, Zappy. You are a guy. You guys are students of the game, just like I am, and just like Idris is. All right. Most of these people didn't realize that he was playing the game in thirds. All right, left sideline to left hash to right hash, and then right hash to right sideline. Notice that every pass that he was making was between 5-7 yards within that radius
For the most part.
for the most part. And he was on like I told you earlier, he was on a governor. He was being managed. You know what I mean? That's why his interception total was so low and his touchdown total was also kind of low. You know what I mean? 15 touchdowns in 16 games does not bode well for any
Yeah,
quarterback. That's
you
less than a
throw
touchdown a game.
7 on it for the total touchdown, which is like a new stat that they're keeping, particularly with guys that can move. 22 touchdowns. Do I think the numbers go up with more efficient playmakers around him? Yeah, that goes without saying.
And that's why I was saying the next 12 hours is the most critical, because if you can get DJ signed where you don't have to slap the franchise tag on him, then it allows you now know he's with you guys for the next 4, 5, 3 years, whatever the case may be, where you can now talk about trading your second round pick for a DeAndre Hopkins. You can now talk about putting the tag on Saquon or Julian Love, whichever one. You have to look at the market for both, and they're both pretty equal, although we saw cornerbacks really take off a couple years ago where they're now in the 20 per, and I think a guy like Julian Love is going to be getting about 15 to 17 per. So, it's all those things. So this is why these hours are critical, because if you slap that tag on Daniel Jones, to me, that tells me you guys are just too far apart.
And you misplay the hand, but it's going to be conflicting reports. But what I read within the last hour, 2 hours, is that they are making significant progress.
They're working towards a deal.
So it does appear that the deal will be done. And like I said, it comes down to the next priority, which in my opinion, the Giants would probably slap the tag on Barkley, buy themselves one more year with him, and then figure it out from there.
Draft the running back. That's all you got to do.
Yeah.
And it's convenient too.
Mm-hmm, yeah, and you're right, because Breda is a free agent.
Yeah. Brightwell will be back.
Brightwell will be back. So you know what I want to see more of? I want to see more of running back by committee, because that's how we won 2007, and that's how we won in 2011. Running back by committee.
Even in 90, before Hampton was the starter in the playoffs. A lot of people forget that. Mm-hmm. Anderson was the Super Bowl MVP, and rightfully so.
Yeah. If
that field goal is converted, it's Thurman Thomas. He missed, it's Otis Anderson. Rodney Hampton was the starter, got hurt in the Bear game.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
A lot of people forget that Rodney Hampton was on that team. He got a ring out of that.
Yeah, that's what we need. We need running back by committee, because what we need to do as well, it's not mimicking what Philadelphia, what Kansas City was doing. We were doing that long before Philadelphia and Kansas City started doing that. You know what I mean?
And in order to do that to the fullest extent, you need to have the O-line that allows you to do that.
Yeah.
That's one thing that those two previous Giants teams, or even going back to the 90s squad that had the likes of William Roberts and Jumbo Elliott, those guys, Bart Oates.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you need the proper line in order to be able to get the most out. Barkley definitely is a great talent, but the thing is, a lot of his production is also predicated off of the lack of weapons where you're doing those check downs.
Right.
And to your point, this is not the old school NFL. They don't carry the ball 25 to 30 times a game. Go ahead, Zach.
No, I was going to say, I just think it's convenient, man, thinking about everything where the Giants and the Cowboys, they're in the same boat. And you talk about running back by committee. With Dallas, their success has always been through the lead back. But then it's just funny that we're talking about the two teams that are sitting there at 25 and 26 who may very well have the opportunity to snag Bijan. So that's why it's important for the Giants.
Assuming Philly doesn't get cute and take him at 10, which would not be the furthest.
It wouldn't surprise me, but I've got to think that Philly, with the amount of losses they're about to have on the defensive side of the ball, that they need to go out there and secure that defense by either going defensive linemen or going out there and getting enough help that in the secondary, because they have too many free agents. And that's the way I look at with Philly. So now that's the other part about with Dallas and New York too, because 25 and 26, Philly's only a couple picks after that. And if Bijan slips past Dallas, then we're talking about Philly getting lucky and landing Bijan.
I'll be honest. If we're not necessarily if we're tagging Barkley or however that plays, I don't see a scenario where we're taking Bijan, but I could see a scenario where you guys do. That's going to be interesting.
Well, it'll be interesting but either way, the Giants and the Dallas Cowboys are going to be drafting their future running backs this coming April.
The Julian Love situation, we could be going safety late in round 1. I mean, hell, we could be going tight end in round 1.
But it's not often we talk about a player that has the same attributes of an Adrian Peterson or Daniel Tomlinson being there.
They do have similarities.
So when you talk about that, and if you get to sign your quarterback to the deal he wants, and if you bring a D-Hop in, because that's the other thing I think is going to happen, is I think whatever the Giants do is going to lead to Dallas doing the same thing. And that when I say that, I mean receiver. So we're both going to trade for a receiver. Now
you guys are sorely missing Amari Cooper. They haven't quite replaced him.
Mm-hmm.
And in our case, losing Wan'Dale really hurt. Wan'Dale accomplished in half a season what Kadarius Toney couldn't accomplish in a couple. We lost Sterling Shepard. To his credit, great teammate. He stayed on, didn't miss any games, traveled with the team, was a great mentor. Richie James. We don't know if he'll be back, but I think he recovered well from his blemishes in Seattle. Finished the year strong. And Isaiah Hodgins hit the jackpot with him, taking him off the Buffalo practice squad. Mm-hmm. We need a guy that can stretch the field. But
and that's why you talk about D-Hop,
possibility of
Mike Evans
with an outdated contract. Take into consideration too, that is an outdated contract. As we keep the theme on quarterbacks here, what are your thoughts on the Lamar Jackson situation? Is this guy going to be a Raven? Is he going to move on?
I said he's going to Atlanta. I've been saying that. Because I listen to talk radio here in Atlanta, and every morning that's the topic of discussion. 92.9 The Game always talks about, what do you do? We could have Lamar Jackson, but he's going to cost too much money. He's going to cost so many draft picks, and this team is not a quarterback away from making a serious playoff run, which they aren't. They're still working out the kinks with the quarterback with Desmond Ridder. This is what third year, I can't remember. No, it's the second year. He's going to have to grow into the role. But if Atlanta is smart, I would go ahead and pull the trigger to get Lamar Jackson.
They've got the resources to do it.
Yeah. Number one, you bring viability to the Atlanta market, and you're going to bring excitability to you basically are giving a jump start to the Falcon fan.
There are two players in the history of that franchise, at least in our lifetime, Zappy and I. You have a few years on us. Deion Sanders, Michael Vick. Those are the two previous players that had that kind of impact in terms of making people want to tune in just because they were playing. Mm-hmm. I mean, yes, you had Julio Jones. Yes, Matt Ryan is a former league MVP. But those two particular players really changed the game in a couple of different ways. And I said it to you off air. This kind of reminds me in the Atlanta situation a little bit like a Josh Rosen, Kyler Murray deal where, okay, we took him high, but this is presenting itself now, and we're going to go in a different direction.
Mm-hmm.
Former Atlanta Falcon, just going to mention this quickly, Calvin Ridley's back. He's going to be a massive help to that Jacksonville offense. Back to Lamar, though. Just want to make a mention of that.
I'm actually staying very tuned into what's going on with Lamar. The reason being is I believe when Lamar Jackson gets traded to Atlanta, that's where I think it's
So
going
you
to
were that
ultimately
certain that he is gone. There's no reconciling the situation, bandaging up the situation. It's not the Deshaun Watson deal that really made this so complicated.
That's the thing. It's Deshaun Watson made it very complicated, but it wasn't even Deshaun. It was the Cleveland Browns that made it complicated. They were the ones that wanted to be the highest
And
bidder.
a team wants to give you that kind of money. You're going to sign the contract.
You're going to take it all day long. And if there's one thing we know, that never under the existence of the Baltimore Ravens, and even before that, as when they were the Cleveland Browns, did they ever go all in on a player and give him a fully guaranteed contract? We have never seen it, and they have stood firm on that. That is one thing that this franchise has always done, is stood firm on their contracts.
Yeah.
And when Lamar has not budged and he says, I'm taking over 230, I want to be, because it goes back to what we were talking about with social media. These guys want to be the face. Hey, I'm the highest paid quarterback.
You know the funny thing about the way this business works, though? Lamar's a former MVP, but he does have a recent injury history. You take a dude like a DJ whose value is going to be dictated off of the prime market, whether it's a Josh Allen, a Patrick Mahomes, etc. What's funny is that DJ is going to get paid off of what the potential could be. Lamar will not get paid because the experts and the analysts and the scouts say you're not going to be the dude that you used to be. And that is the cold, ugly part of this sport. So I guess what I'm going to say, whether it's Saquon Barkley, Daniel Jones, and any of these guys, regardless of who I root for, that's why the loyalty is to the dollar. And I do understand both sides of it, because at the end of the day, these are billionaires versus millionaires. I always use that
you're looking at it, and plus it's all about security. Well, it's a dangerous game you play, and you're also trying to get the highest amount of money just in case you end up getting hurt and you can't function in society normally ever again. You know what I mean? So you want to make sure you cover all.
And even in a safer NFL, CTE is still a very real thing. Keeping it on QBs again. Derek Carr going to New Orleans. This is the right fit for him as far as I'm concerned. I think the Raiders played their hand wrong here. I'm not saying that he needed to be their future, but they didn't respect him properly. I think he put in the time to get a little more respect from that organization. But then again, this is an organization that won out and got a subpar head coach, in my opinion, but a very good offensive coordinator in Josh McDaniels, and totally took a crap on Rich Bisaccia, similar to like how Carolina did with Steve Wilkes. So the Raiders, to put it bluntly, haven't been doing things properly for a little while here. I want to say that first and foremost. I'm not saying that he was the guy, but you don't treat people like that. It's just not the way you treat people.
Yeah, I mean, with Derek Carr being a Saint, that's also going to set the market up to
Indeed.
where
that's. You took the words right out of my mouth. That's hey, I'll tell you why here in a second.
Yeah, it's going to set the market up so that I think DJ is going to come down on his demands. He's going to be like, well, I mean, look at Geno Smith. He signed with Seattle, right? Geno Smith is decent. He's not going to, he's not going to take you anywhere. If I'm gonna pay a quarterback $45 million a year, you know what I'm asking for? I'm asking for Super Bowl rings. I'm asking for at least
Dude, you're breaking up a little bit.
You hear me now?
Yeah, you're good. For some reason, it's like a weird drilling sound, but it comes in and out.
Yeah, that's why I threw my headset on, because it was starting to hurt my ear. It's a weird sound.
I thought,
but what I'm looking for, if I'm gonna pay you $45 million a year, I better see Lombardi's in my case, at least two of them. what I mean? I better see a tick parade in the Canyon of Heroes. At least 2 of them. You know, one, I'd consider 45 million. 2, yeah, he's earned it. Anything?
And that's why the only. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just saying that's why the only guy that today that plays that deserves that is Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, exactly.
And sometimes when a guy lifts the market up, you get those in-betweeners that are getting it's like the trickle-down effect. You're getting paid because of what that dude's doing, not necessarily what you did, but you play the right position. You look at Leonard Williams a couple of years ago going to arbitration about is he a defensive end or a linebacker. Obviously, that has a significant pay difference. Before we get out of here, fellas.
Wait, the one thing I wanted to add about it. All right, so we're talking about setting the market where I believe the same thing, that Derek Carr set the market to the minimum level. And you could probably, and actually I would say Geno Smith did with the 35
in less than 4 years.
Yeah, and well, even then. So you have Geno Smith got 35 per, Derek Carr gets 37.5 per, Aaron Rodgers sitting up there with 50 per. I think Lamar's deal is going to settle where it's going to be a 47.5 to 48 per, and he's going to set the market for the top tier quarterbacks, and Daniel Jones will now have the spot, and that's where you guys have to ask yourselves, is he worth 42.5? That's going to be where he's at.
The better question to me is not necessarily he's worth 42.5, 40, or 39.8 or whatever. What makes him worth it or not worth it is what the people that you believe in to build this vision of what the new giant football vision is, if they believe in him. Ultimately, that's the real answer to me.
Well, the answer is always going to be, yeah, we believe in you, but in order for us to fully believe in you, we need to have this, we need to have this, so that way we can also invest in you and surround you with the talent you need. That's the argument.
One thing I'll say here is I think 40 is the max, and I think 40 is what he gets. Not a penny over, and I actually do believe that. I don't think it's 42.5. I don't think it's 41.6. I think it's 40 even. Before we get out of here, fellas, true or false? Aaron Rodgers will be a Jet. I'm going to say true.
We'll have to see. I'm going to have to fence sit on this one.
True. We're talking about the Jets. They are ready to win now.
Indeed, and if not, I'm going to say Jimmy Garoppolo. True or false? Lamar be a Falcon. I think we're all in agreement on that.
Yeah, true.
True.
Well, there's smoke this here, and they've been talking about it for weeks on end, and I'm like, if you're talking about it for weeks on end, then there must be something else to this story. Even though the analysts are like, well, Atlanta is not a quarterback away. I'm like, well, a quarterback is where you should start because Desmond Ritter is not going to put bodies in the league because they have a lot of holes on the offensive line and in offense and on offense. Who's he throwing the ball to? You know what I mean?
They did last year invested heavily to get Deshaun Watson to Atlanta. Mm-hmm. Deshaun Watson, a guy who had already missed a lot of time. We're talking about Lamar Jackson. They're going to invest heavily to, I don't want to necessarily say mortgage the future, but I think they're to that point because I do think Drake London is the future of that team. Mm-hmm. I do think that Kyle Pitts will be a negotiating piece to include. But, yeah, I think it just makes too much sense that he's not a Falcon.
Last thing, true or false? DJ 4 years, Saquon gets franchised. I'm going to say true.
I say true.
I say false. I say DJ 4 years and Julian Love gets franchised, and Saquon, because of the depth behind the running back position in this year's draft, I say false. I think Julian Love is going to be your bigger commodity to sign.
Yeah, I tend to agree. And you mentioned what the market's looking like for, hybrid safety like that. you're possibly looking at 15 a year. We'll be keeping everyone in the know of what's going to be happening in these most critical hours. I'm not nervous, though. I actually feel good about our situation. I do think that we're going to give Daniel Jones a good deal. I think Saquon will get tagged. I genuinely do believe that, but that will be revealed. Until next time, I am Richie. He is Zappy. He is Quentin. We appreciate you guys watching. If you haven't already, make it a point. Like and subscribe to my YouTube channel, the Richie Hicks Jr. Sports Podcast. And we've done a lot of content over the course of the last 4 days, so definitely give all of that a look. We will be back probably towards the weekend, if not sooner. We're going to hit you with another baseball preview, and we're also going to be looking for some follow-up action for our movie show. Until next time, I am Richie. For the boys, we are out.